Welcome back to Good Morning Colorado. There is so much going on this weekend, actually. There's the Pikes Peak Rodeo or Bust happening, Victor Gold Rush and Cripple Creek, also the Paranormal Cirque. And check this out. Always great. We haven't had this camera in a while. Seven Falls.
If you haven't been there at night, by the way, great place to go. It's so beautiful when they light that up at night.
I gotta check that out.
Looks pretty nice right now, actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't it?
Very cool.
Anywhere you can find some water, I guess, to help take a little bit of a break from the heat. It's always kind of nice.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and it's summer. We're going to be pretty hot. I mean, this is, again, they call these the dog days of summer for a reason. It just kind of settles in, and there's not a lot of change. So it's nice this morning. It will be real warm again this afternoon. We'll have a chance for some showers and thunderstorms, things that, not going to surprise too many people. Right now, just a few clouds around, as seen from Fowler. We'll probably have a few storms out across the plains later on today as well, but it's quiet right now. And temperatures in most cases are in the 50s and 60s until you get pretty high up into the mountains. Leadville's at 44 right now, and Alamosa's sitting right at 49 degrees. But generally speaking, it's a little warmer than that in most areas. And Futurecast is picking up on some of the clouds floating across the state here this morning. I think we'll be pretty quiet through about lunchtime in most cases. Futurecast does show a little bit of green showing up over the mountains right around that time frame, so the first of the showers will begin developing around or shortly after lunchtime, and then as we progress a little farther into the afternoon, we'll see some isolated storms, at least initially, primarily out across the mountain areas. Eventually, these will start to come east and likely affect the I-25 corridor first. Over the far eastern plains, it might be a little later on before these things get going. Notice the brighter colors on the map. It's an indication that some of the storms could produce some localized downpours, maybe some of that small pea-size hail, as well as some frequent lightning and some gusty wind. And of course, they tend to cool you off too, which is always helpful on a hot afternoon, which will be the case today with a lot of areas in the 80s and 90s. In fact, well into the 90s over the far eastern plains. We'll have 70s and 80s up across the mountains and mountain valleys this afternoon, with most of Taylor County in the mid-70s to lower 80s prior to storms arriving. Mid to upper 80s around Colorado Springs, Fountain, and Hanover should hit about 90 today. We'll have lower 90s from Pueblo westward through Canyon City, Westcliff around 80, probably going to have mid-80s on the higher terrain south and west of Pueblo. Again, near to the mountains, that's where the storms are most likely to develop first. You'll get some shade, some cooling wind, and so that'll take the edge off the heat a little bit. Severe weather is not a great threat today. There's a slight chance that some of the strongest storms over the plains could briefly approach severe criteria, maybe some 1-inch diameter hail or some wind gusts around 60 miles an hour. This is most likely with the line of storms that may come through during the late evening and nighttime hours over northeastern and east central Colorado. Futurecast shows the scattered storms that most of us are likely to deal with very slowly drifting away from the mountains. And again, you see a pretty good coverage. And this is probably going to be one of our higher storm coverage days over the next several. So I think that our chances for rain are probably better today for some of you than they might be over the next several days. But again, there will be some scattered natures here to the storms, and so not everybody's going to get rain. Notice at 9 o'clock you see this broken line of storms coming through northeast and east central Colorado. Those are the storms that, if we're going to have some severe weather, may briefly produce such things. And then tonight that'll all wind down. We'll end up partly cloudy and fall back into the 50s and 60s in most areas in eastern Colorado. We'll still find some 40s if you get up high enough into the mountains. Highway 115 in Turkey Creek looking south towards the mountains. Again, it's hazy, but not a lot of clouds, at least in that view this morning. We'll have a few storms around on Sunday. We're in for a real warm week. And it looks like most of the storms are going to remain up across the mountains, especially later in the week. And we'll talk about that in our extended forecast coming up soon. Kerjan, back to you.